What's up, rookie? My name is Shaun D, McMillan, and today I'm going to teach you how to get this look using these tools, textures, and these blending modes so that you can draw really good, really fast using Photoshop. Now, Photoshop can be amazing. It can help you to create really professional art really fast. But sometimes Photoshop does not play nicely. You know what I'm talking about. You see Photoshop walking up on the playground, and he's kind of intimidating because he's got all these menus and buttons. You see him, you size him up, you think, you know what, I can play with this guy. I want him on my team. But then he tries to intimidate you. He tries to bully you. He tries to make you feel insecure about your art. Now, if Photoshop were just some young guy, you know, like one of these freeware programs or one of these little mobile apps, then you'd be like, what's up, Photoshop? Who you think you are? You want a piece of me? But no, Photoshop's been around a long time. Photoshop is one of the most professional softwares out there. And you've seen so much amazing art on the internet. People are just constantly killing it with Photoshop. And so you know Photoshop is not the problem. And so it leaves us thinking, doubting ourselves as an artist. It hits us where we're sensitive. It hits us in our art. Today I'm going to teach you a few techniques to help you tame Photoshop. We're going to bend Photoshop to our will so that you can become the truly great artist that you secretly suspect you might be. Today, we are going to teach Photoshop who's boss.
Now I need to load my files. So usually you can just double click on these files and it'll load them, but I'll take you step by step just to make sure it all gets done properly. Let's go to our tool presets and go to load tool presets. And what you're looking for is that Smudges tool presets file. So you'll select that. And then for your brushes, you'll want to brush presets, load brushes, and then here we'll want these Shaun McMillan watercolor brushes. Now if you're not seeing these palettes, you can find them, just go to painting and you'll definitely have your brushes set up here. Some references. Now I love Calvin and Hobbes. Bill Watterson's got a great watercolor style. We'll go ahead and drag in some of him. And this should go in the references folder. What else? Let's draw some Hayao Miyazaki in honor of my good buddy Takayuki Morishita, who inspired me to make this tutorial. Stuff from Princess Mononoke. If you haven't seen this film, go watch this film. Alright, so I think our file is pretty much set up. And last but not least, you definitely want to go in and change these preferences. Okay, go to, this is really the only preferences you need to change. Go to Edit, Preferences, Performance. It's not letting me do it. But anyways, you want to go in there. I've already done this, so I don't really need to do this, but you need to go into Edit, Preferences, Performances, and change your undo states. Because, really, Photoshop, you don't think I want to undo more than 20 times? So please, go and change that to more like 300. SM watercolor brush, make it nice and big. And if I go to my swatches, you can see I've got some very lightly, if you look at these colors are all basically in the middle range. They're not super saturated, they're not super dark, they're light pastel colored colors, because basically watercolor is almost always within this range up here. Okay. Now this comes on very opaquely, but you can of course mess with your flow and your opacity to change that. And the lower you turn down your opacity and flow, the more of this texture you'll get. Love this brush, okay? But if you want that opaque, which I like to paint opaque and then blend it later on, you can turn these back up. Again, I really just keep my opacity at 100% and then just turn this on and off. Okay? Alright, so those are your brushes. When you use a paintbrush, make it big. Make it like 3 times as big as you think you should. Don't fall into the trap, like a typical rookie, of trying to paint perfectly with a small brush. You will be here all day trying to fill in your shapes. Okay, instead, go outside the lines with a big brush. It's just so much faster, so much more artistic, and it'll help you to block in really fast. It just, for many reasons which I'm not getting into right now, always paint with a brush 3 times bigger than you want it to be, that you think it should be. All right, so that's it for my brushes. Now I can go ahead and get started. So let's just do a quick run through of how I would do a typical piece of art. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do some Hayao Miyazaki fan art. So I'm gonna bring out my Hayao Miyazaki, and we're gonna move him up to the top, get him kind of out of the way. So there's my reference. I'm gonna lock that so I don't end up accidentally painting on that layer. Let's go to pencils, grab the pencil brush, and let's sketch away. Let's say you wanna draw like a pro, right? Like you wanna make some sophisticated art, and you wanna do it in a relatively short amount of time. You don't wanna take forever. What I recommend is using very light pencil sketch simply for composition, and then go straight into your inks. I actually read up on Bill Watterson's technique, and Bill Watterson, when he was doing all that great Calvin and Hobbes artwork, he used as little pencil as possible, kept his lines very thin, very minimal, and then went right into the inks. Oh, if you're using a Wacom tablet, then there's this really lovely shortcuts. Basically what you're gonna do is for your brush, okay, you can hold down the Alt key and then hold down the right click button on your pen tool. Hold down the Alt key, hold down the right button, the right, what would you call it, the right mouse click button on your brush, and then you can go up and down to change your, well, let's do the eraser. Hold down the Alt key, go up and down for your softness, left and right for your size. So I can make my brush really hard if I go down, I can make it really soft if I go up, and I can make it go left and right if I want to get bigger or smaller. I use that all the time. God, it's so useful, especially if you're an eraser. Because sometimes you want like a really sharp erase, like a perfect erase. Sometimes you want a very soft erase. God, I love that. That is just so useful. Okay, so now I'm ready for some inking. Let's grab our ink brush. And let's go bold and heavy. Okay, I know you guys, you're afraid of your art. You're always trying to draw with the lightest, thinnest pens and pencils you can find. But I'm telling you, go bold or go home, okay? Another thing I'm going to suggest, don't zoom in too much on your artwork, okay? It's tempting, I know, but try to stay zoomed out. And the reason why is because, of course, it's easier if you're going to go in and zoom in. But if you stay zoomed out, it will help you to see that piece of your art in relation to everything else. Because half of drawing is about size relationships and about gestalt, keeping the whole thing feeling right, not just part of it feeling right. You zoom in too much too often, you get too close to your page, you're gonna, it's hard to explain, but it's really better to stay zoomed out as much as possible. Especially when concerned about proportions, okay? If you're getting really close to your page all the time, and then when you zoom out, things don't, like the size relationships don't work, well, stay zoomed out. It'll solve it. I'm telling you, it'll solve your problems, okay? Draw like a painter. Painters stay as far away from their paintings as possible. Okay, so at this point I've been drawing for a little while, and I can definitely see some things that need to be fixed. But the key thing is to just kind of take a step back and to really look at it to find what are the errors that need to be fixed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a layer called Notes. And I'm just going to circle all the areas that I know need to be fixed. Okay, so let's get some red for our notes here. Okay, so I definitely want to fix this area. I want this part to move over to the left a little bit. What else? I would like this to be more like down here. I think some structure is missing here. What you want to do is go to Image, Image Rotation, Flip Horizontal. This will really help you to see things that you couldn't see before. I'm going to fix those things and then I'll be done with my drawing.
Now, one of my favorite aspects of drawing and painting in Photoshop is custom brushes. You have got to try using some really good custom brushes. You'll be surprised at how easily it makes your art look more professional. And stop, I know you guys, you rookies, you love using these really fine, really small, clean lines. Absolutely not. The nastier, the messier the brush is, the better, okay? Professional artists, we like loose lines. We like crazy rough brushes. And so I'm gonna give you some really professional brushes, and what you'll see is that it's harder to control, but that actually makes it easier to draw and paint with, because just abandon control, okay? The less control you have over the medium, the better, because you get these happy accidents, you get these little mistakes in there, and those mistakes, because it's filled with little mistakes, they don't seem like mistakes. All of a sudden they seem like they're just more artistic. It's part of the art. And so it allows you to go outside the lines, it allows you to paint really fast, it allows you to not have to worry about little mistakes and details. Everything just kind of gets lost in the mysteriousness of that medium. And we're not going to get into the brush engine, how to make brushes. I'm just going to give you some of my best brushes, which you can find at gumroad.com. I've provided a link in the details of the video. If you go down there and take a look at some of those links, you'll find some very useful resources, some of those absolutely required for doing this tutorial.
All right, so at this point, I've been drawing and painting, and I've got my layer color, I got my inks color, I got my pencils. Why is inks on overlay? Oh, that's the dark. Okay, so now we need to talk about layer blending. Okay, so what I did with my shadows, you see my shadows here, those are not actually colored shadows. I mean, they might be slightly colored, but they're really just black. The reason why they don't look black is because I'm using layer blending. So if I switch normal here, right, like originally it was normal, I painted a bunch of black, but what I did is I switched it to either overlay or soft light. Okay, overlay is a stronger version, soft light's a lighter version. Since this watercolors, it's better to use the lighter versions. We're using soft light, and now what's happened is that black is now just a slightly darker version of the color underneath, which is wonderful. This is amazing. Okay, soft light and overlay. Always, always, always take your texture layers, switch them to overlay, let them mix with the stuff, let them kind of blend with the stuff underneath them. You get amazing effects. You can never really predict exactly what the effect's going to be, but you get such amazing things. Okay, I'll show you another example. I'm just going to make a new layer and then drop a big gradient across it. Okay, so let's just go to my gradient tool. I've got white and black here, and I'm just going to hold in the shift key, drag from the bottom to the top, and I get this big gradient, right? And that's a black to nothing. Let's do a black to white. Okay, so I got this big gradient, right, underneath my inks. I can even put it above my inks. All I see is this big gradient. Change that to soft light. Oh my god, amazing, right? So now I've got this natural thing where the effect is having this really strong effect at the bottom and a very light effect at the top because it's from black to white. If I change it to overlay, it'll be even stronger. Oh, that's cool. I don't want to use that, right? That's not exactly the effect I'm going for, but you gotta admit, it's kind of cool. Okay, so always play around with overlay and soft light. You never know what you're gonna get. And if you like some of this, you can keep some of it, but I'm not gonna. Well, I don't know, maybe the soft light, let's take a look. You know, it's just, it creates this really nice natural, in reality, we see gradients all the time, right? Like, part of the sheet of paper is closer to the eyes than the other part of the paper, so there is a natural kind of gradient. So when you put this artificial gradient in there, it makes it look more natural. And if you turn it down to 50%, you'll barely notice it at all. It makes it very subtle. As you can see, this looks more computerized and fake. This looks slightly more like it was scanned or something, okay? Alright, I'm going to delete it though, just to keep things simple. A little too subtle for my taste. Okay, so now what we're going to do is, I've got my shadows layer, which is called overlay. It's actually soft light, so I should rename that. Well, I'll just call it shadows. Okay. And now I did, in the case of this blue area, right, if I change it back to normal, I did modify. I made it a little lighter and made it a little more greener, because if you look at my reference, he does have a very green watercolor wash there. Okay. Alright, so that's nice. Very cool. Good thing about soft light is you can also use it for your pencils. Okay, so your pencils could be, well, not pencils, let's do inks. Your ink layer also, you can change that to overlay, and again, it makes them transparent but in a very fun, kind of nice way. Okay, now Overlay and soft light do not work above white. Like this is almost a white background, that's why it practically disappears. But if you have a dark background, then your overlay will work really well, and your soft light will work really well. But we want our strong black ink, so we're going to switch that back to normal. Please, look, you guys, you gotta stop drawing and painting on white, okay? Even for me, this background is just a little bit too white. But it's watercolor, so and my reference as white, so I'm kind of like overlooking it. But it's really much better to draw and paint on top of gray or just on a very dark textured background, okay? If you look at my art, you'll find it's almost always, even when I'm sketching for the very early stages, get rid of the white, okay? The white, it's not good for your eyes. It doesn't look good, doesn't feel good. You drop in a nice dark texture, and it just feels like you're drawing on paper. It looks like I shouldn't say it feels like it looks like you're drawing on paper. You're still gonna have this god awful plastic frictionless drawing on your Wacom pad, but at least you can make it look like you're drawing on paper. And now what we need to do is I've got my background's got a nice watercolor bite to it, right? So I've got this nice texture for my background, but wherever I have paint, basically I lose that watercolor paper texture. So what I'm going to do now, this is super cool, like I said before, take your textured layers. Let's grab one of these harsh watercolor textures. We're going to grab this one. We're going to place it above everything. Okay? And we're going to switch it to soft light. Now it's lightening up my artwork a little bit too much, but as you can see now I have watercolor paper texture in the background and watercolor texture in the foreground. Now there's this interesting thing you should know about soft light blending. It's a very useful fact. Soft light blending will practically disappear if it's gray. Now this layer is blue and green, greenish, lightish bluish greenish, right? It's not really at 50%, it's a higher key. So it is affecting my artwork in a way that I don't like. It's lightening all my colors. Also, important to know, that little icon right there, I dragged it in here, it's a placed file, which I'm not going to explain right now, but you need to make it editable, you got to go to rasterize, layer, all layers, or just that layer. So now that symbol is gone, this is now an editable layer. Alright, so let's change this as close as we can to gray. So I'm going to go Control Shift U, and it desaturates it. Or, let's undo that, I can do Control U, bring up my hue saturation modifier, and I can slowly desaturate that. And I can lighten it, or I can darken it. And I'm looking at the little icon there, I kind of want it to be, well, let's cancel this, change this back to normal. Let's get that as close to 50% gray as possible. Okay, I'll even make a new layer with 50% gray. Just for comparison's sake. Control U. I don't want to change the color, I just want to change the saturation. Turn saturation down a little bit. And that darkness. I want it at 50%. Very good, so now I've got a layer that's practically going to disappear except for the texture if I turn it to soft light. Well, before I do that though, I will change the levels. So Control L for levels, and make the whites whiter, the blacks blacker. And try to get it back down to, well, not too much. Okay, just a little bit more contrast. Try to get the value of it back to 50%. Alright. And turn down the saturation because I don't want to affect I don't want all my colors to be blue and green. Okay. Now change this to soft light. And it doesn't affect my colors too much, but it does give me watercolor paper texture. And if I want more of it, I just gotta turn up the contrast on that particular layer. So make the blacks blacker on that particular layer. And now I've got watercolor texture on all of my color. Very nicely done. one last little trick. If you want that to apply only to your color and not to your background, because right now I just made my background. I have the watercolor in the background. Okay, so I have BG layer. It's got this watercolor texture. And then I have this watercolor texture above it as well. So it becomes twice as strong. What I can do is I can apply it to only my color layer. I drag it to right above my color layer and then hold down the Alt key, click in between the two layers, and now this watercolor texture, soft light watercolor texture is only going to show up where I have paint on this watercolor layer. Okay, I'll turn off the BG so you can see it. Okay, that watercolor texture is not showing up here. It's only showing up where I have paint. If I unclip it, you'll see it shows up everywhere, but now it only shows up on top of the color. Very nice. I think that's pretty good. I could go in more detail, but it's not really the purpose of this tutorial. I think you get the idea. Paint rough, paint loose. A couple other things I have in here for you is the smudge tool. Very useful. You can go into your smudge tool and then go into your tool presets, and you'll have some interesting ones in here. I believe I gave you smudge nice, which works really well. Directional blend. Hard dapple is really nice, although it's pretty powerful, so you gotta be careful. Last but not least, let's do our finishing touches. So if you do a lot of layer blending, you have these layers affecting everything else, you can end up with contrast that's not very good. Okay, you can end up having all your colors being too light or all being too dark. So what I usually like to do at the very end is put a levels adjustment layer at the very top. So this layer up at the top is going to affect everything underneath. And if I look at my data here, sometimes you'll have like almost no, like it'll flatline at this end or at this end. If it flatlines, then you need to bring your whites up to the peaks. What that's going to do is this would make, if I squeeze this, it would make my blacks blacker or my darks darker, and this will make my lights lighter. So for instance, I can pretty much get rid of that. This is supposed to be white, right? If I actually go all the way up to that highest peak, it'll make the background white, like white. I don't want that. I don't want to lose my watercolor texture, so I'm going to keep this. But it's just something to keep in mind whenever you're doing a lot of layer blending.
So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Let me know in the comments if you liked it. I am considering to make a series of tutorials, which I would call tutorials that don't suck. And the next tutorial would be, I'd like to go a little bit further with this watercolor technique and show you how to do some of the Zelda Skyward Sword art style. And we can get into a little bit of color theory. Let's have a lot of fun. But, you know, it takes a lot of time. I'm not really making any money here. This is really just for the benefits of the community. It's taken me 10, 15 years to learn a lot of these techniques, to just kind of discover them through experimentation. And I could just like hold on to them to myself, but I'd really much rather share them with you guys. But it does take a lot of time. So let me know if there is interest. And if there is, then I will continue to try to make some of these videos. I also have another YouTube channel called Best Class Ever. Me and some friends have made some videos there. If you'd like to take a look, there is a link in the details. Be sure to subscribe. I don't really post videos really often, but I try to post quality videos. So what you can do is don't just subscribe to the channel, but click on that bell. If you click on the bell, then you'll get a notification when I post a video, and that way you won't miss any tutorials that I post in the future. So keep drawing, keep painting in Photoshop, and let's make some beautiful art really fast. Be sure to post it on social networks. You can find me on Facebook at Facebook/Shaun D McMillan. Let me know how your work looks. I'd love to see some digital watercolor.